So just to introduce today's speaker, James has been shooting editorial, lifestyle, advertising and fashion photography for many decades in locations all over the world, and as you'll see, he's developed a distinctive, unique yet versatile style that is described as polished, edgy and cinematic. James has also worked many years as a creative director and producer, and is therefore highly skilled in all aspects of production. More recently, James has started a fashion photographer's YouTube channel and blog called Silver Gun Type, in which he shares insights from his vast experience shooting as a fashion and advertising photographer and discussing things like shoots, composition, photography techniques, the business of photography, and taking audiences through his own personal sort of edit workflow and post-production techniques. So we'll have a talk from James, and then afterwards we'll have a sit down and we'll sort of interview, and then I'll open up to audience Q&A. So the floor is yours, James.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming, and if I seem a little bit nervous, that's probably because I don't do this very often, but I thought that what I'd do first of all is I've got a little video that I've put together which demonstrates some of the work and behind the scenes of some of the productions, and that's probably a good introduction to myself. So I'll play that first of all. So there you got that in a nutshell. That's some of the sort of productions that I've done over the last 15 years. Okay, so I'm James Nader, fashion, advertising and lifestyle photographer, and I've been doing it for quite a few years actually, 15 to be exact. And prior to that, I left photography. I fell out of love with photography and I went in to create my own advertising agency, new media agency. It started off in my bedroom and it developed in the Northwest to employing 15 people, and we were an interactive agency, so I learned a lot of behind the scenes. Gave me a good insight into what agencies are looking for when you produce the work for them. I did a BA Honours degree in Wolverhampton where I received a first, but nothing really prepared me for the outside world. And whilst I was at university, I managed to do an exchange to New York. I went to Rochester Institute of Technology, which was Kodak City at the time. And whilst there, I learned some of the old-fashioned processes, which was cyanotypes, gun bichromates, and silver printing, and a little bit of video. So getting into photography wasn't that difficult at the time, but getting the real clients that you wanted to work with were. And so after a period of time, I headed off to Athens to chase some really good magazines at the time, which are very Italian and very dark and mysterious and edgy and creative, unlike the ones that were in the UK. So I headed off over there. And whilst I was there, I had the opportunity to assist a photographer called Uli Smith. Uli Weber, yeah, not Uli Smith. But I was in an agency called Artists, and basically what they did, they put you out with photographers and direct bookings. And I managed to work with some great photographers, but his work very much influenced me, which was in the style of film. So when I was working with him, I would use 2 Hasselblads and 5 Hasselblad backs, rolling the films, taking them out, making notes, taking them off to labs. So that's where I got my grounding and developed my own technique. Sorry, the wrong way. So what I thought about, how I thought I'd break down my work was into black and whites and different sections, because it is quite an eclectic mix of work over the years for different clients. So at one time I was specialist in black and white, in the traditional darkroom techniques of processing, printing. Used to use Agfa papers and things like that. So I just thought I'd do a little section on black and white, but not necessarily talking about black and white, but talking about the shots. So headshots for me are something that really just happens when I'm doing work for the clients. I don't necessarily do portraits, but headshots. So here, black and white headshot using a film light in the background on the left-hand side and shooting into it and using a piece of A4 paper as a reflector is quite effective. More dynamic compositions. So I've been doing some fine artwork as well over the last 3 years. Well, just before lockdown and COVID, I was into art galleries and they were buying some of my work and they started to put it out before they decided to go bankrupt and not sell anymore. But I managed to sell 2. But these types of pictures were actually put into large Diasec pictures, which Diasec is like a very clear resin that looks like that with your pictures bonded to the back of it. Also, some of my own work and processes. I tried to develop some of my old techniques, and one of the ideas I had was tin types. I used to like the tin types and how they work, but the practicalities of doing that for me was a little bit difficult. So I tried to do it digitally, and this was just a little bit of an effect where I did digital darkroom techniques to create like a soft plate picture. Other things like Lambertz calendar, when you're going from A to B, you can actually have to make a decision to jump out and jump onto the side and take some pictures of using locations that aren't necessarily designated by the brands. You jump out and take advantage of that. And sometimes these are the shots that are used, and this is one of those shots. So I've got a very simple setup. I've got some ProPhoto lights, which I'm pointing into the face from above with an assistant, and it's just one shot, one light. And what I'm doing is I'm underexposing the background, putting enough light into the face, but to create a theatrical background. This was on the DC3, which is in Iceland. As anybody who's been there, they know all about it. And then you have to move people out of the way. This was for a front cover of a German magazine. Whilst we were there, we used to shoot the pictures, and they'd fire them off because it's a German company, and they'd fire them off when we were shooting them to create these front covers for their own PR. Low lighting, this was about 6:30, just before the sun went down. Timed exposure, like a 30th of a second, 15th of a second, and increasing the ISO still gave me a great shot. I think that was shot on a Fuji GFX 50S, I think. And a lot of my shots I do in between shots. So when I'm actually doing a shot with a model and things like that, there's a shot where you finish here and you go to there. Normally the model will break for have a little break, and in between I just say, look this way quickly. I take a couple of shots, and for me particularly the cinematic lighting here is what my strength is, using one light to create effect. And my influence comes from the classic photographers Hurrell and Sinclair Bull from the Hollywood lighting days. That's where I take a lot of my inspiration from. I've just put this in because this is very minimal lighting. It's done with a £50 handheld LED off Amazon and a piece of A4 reflection on the left-hand side in the eye. This is my own retouching, which I do a little bit of my own retouching on occasion. So going back to that shot where we were jumping out of the caravan, the camper van, onto the black of the riverbed. The model was just standing there, dressed like this on the left-hand side. She was really cold. I actually thought that was a better shot for me. The client didn't like it, but I liked it. So I just said, quick, turn this way. I did 6 shots, and that's the shot I got. So I've processed that in Lightroom and then Photoshop. So most of my production goes from Lightroom for my selections. Then I go into Photoshop, unless I'm using Capture One, then I do it the other way around, Capture One into Photoshop, although Capture One is slightly better processing than Photoshop, so I'm told. And the reason why I put this in, it's one of my classic pictures that I really like. So when I went to university, I was inspired by paintings and things like this with the chiaroscuro, which is the dark light, light and dark from the painters like Rembrandt. So this is what's classed as Rembrandt lighting. And it's just always been in my collection because I particularly like the dynamic range in the face and the chest and things like that. So yeah, I'll put this one in as well because this is one of my original black and white contact sheets from about 30 odd years ago, and it was my very first commission. So this was actually, I was given the first commission by this company, which was a menswear company, and they normally travelled around the world at different locations to create these shoots. And they turned around to me and said, "James, where would you like to go?" And I said, "Blackpool." And so they weren't very happy because most of the teams like to go off and have a drink and enjoy themselves afterwards. So they weren't really that impressed. But yeah, for me, I'd actually got a generator on the beach, and I got an old blonde 2K light instead of the Pro Photo lights that we use now. And so it was generating light onto the beach with the generator, and just put a little bit of light into the face of the model just to create a little bit of interest. And it's shot on film T-Max, I think it's 100, or I think it's T-Max 100. And the reason I put this one in is because when I was looking through various collections, which I keep drives and drives of digital files for the last 15 years, I've got them all, I never throw anything away. I found this picture, and it was a bit of experimental work in a studio in London. And then actually now going to reinvent this picture and turn it into an NFT. So I don't know if anybody knows anything about NFTs. I've heard anything about it. Yeah, everybody's doing NFTs at the moment. So I'm just staying a bit quiet for those to simmer out a little bit. You know, everybody's dropping them and using gas and Bitcoin, whatever it means. But I'll give it a go. But this is one of the ones I'm going to put into a collection. And the reason I put this in is because when I first went into shooting menswear, which is probably where I first started off commercially, I was inspired by the Russian Revolution and propaganda pictures, where you've got the guy and the girl and the family all standing, and it was low angle shooting up, and they're from the illustration. So I actually decided that it's quite good, that is. So I started to lower my angles, shooting up at the models and using strong lighting. So this is done with sunlight, but I would use flashlight the same, or any light. That's probably my key lighting technique, which is top lighting, Rembrandt, wherever I go. Don't overcomplicate things. So establishing myself, so getting into photography wasn't that difficult, but getting real clients was. Finding the right clients to suit my work was a challenge, and I've done that about Athens, so there we go. So another section, portraits. So portraits, I've not really been a great portrait photographer. As I said, I do headshots, not portraits. And this is one of my portraits there. So recently I started to do some portraits. Got some new kit. I shot with this Fuji. This is a Fuji X-T3. I used this for. I bought it for myself, and I gave it a go, and I really liked it. But I took inspiration from watching one of these Netflix documentaries, and Platon was on there, and I was really inspired by the way he was dealing with the model. So I don't know if anybody knows of Platon at all. He photographs celebrities and presidents and everything, but what I found interesting and intriguing, that he keeps the same lighting on everything that he does, virtually swaps cameras, but it's about the engagement of him with his subject. So whereas I direct most of the time the models, I will direct them, look this way, do this, let's move that light in, Jack, get this, move this there. He didn't. He just set up, and what he did was he talked to the subject. And I noticed there was a difference. So I tried this for a day, and I actually found out that I got a load more shots that completely different. There's an engagement, and I quite enjoyed it. So I'm going to do more of them. So this guy was a tattoo artist, he's a barber, and then by the end of the day, so I spent 6 hours with him. We started to develop these looks where he started to offer him me shots. So we were saying, what about this, James, and what about that? So we started to collaborate, which is normally you do collaborate with a model, but it was on a different level. I quite like the interaction for a change. Made my job easier. I didn't have to think about it so much. I'm doing a little bit of Saatchi online work at the moment, and trying to get onto a gallery to try and follow the fine art route. And this was part of an ongoing project that I've got, which is with tattoos, which has been going on for years. And this girl had tattoos, but she didn't have one on her face. So we had a discussion. She says, "Could you put a tattoo on my face?" And when I did it, I said, "Oh, I quite like that." So I kept it. The lighting, again, is one simple light. no reflection, top light, but it's with Kino lighting. So it's not flash lighting, it's like the old-fashioned white fluorescent tubes in a great big box like that, put over the top, and that's how that was lit, nothing else. So during after university, when I was out on my own, doing my own thing, I came across pictures of a girl which I liked, and I chased her up, and she became my muse. So this is a Dita Von Teese lookalike. I don't know if anybody knows Dita Von Teese, but yeah, so I loved the look of this girl. She got that retro burlesque, she was a burlesque dancer, so we worked together on quite a few different shoots. I just put this in because this is shot through, I think it was just a scarf. It's just a very simple light, and in fact that's the lighting from the bulb of a Bones light. So the softbox was off and I was using the actual 150 watt bulb to illuminate the model. So when I was in Iceland for this company, I was there for 3 weeks, and every so often during a shoot with them, they will fly in a celebrity. So this is Nader from 99 Red Balloons. So she came over with her daughter Larissa, and I had 2 days working with her, so she became part of the calendar, but she also became part of the portrait shoot. So this was done for the German PR. They'd fire this off to the different magazines and things like that just to say this is what they're doing. But you can't tell from this that there's gale force winds, there's hail, there's all sorts of things going on there. And then the client says to me, James, you just got to make it happen because she's 80,000 euros. What can you do? So then I just go, right, one light. In fact, it's my assistant who said to me, James, just do what you normally do. I said, what's that? He says, put your one light up and just hope for the best. So anyway, I did, and it worked. So recently, I went to the National Portrait Gallery. I should have done it sooner, but I actually really enjoyed it. And I could see some of the original inspiration from my fine art, because when I did BA Honours, I did a foundation course before that, and I did everything. So I went from fine art, sculpting, and all these different things. And I quite like the fine art. And I've got a canvas at home that I'm ready to have a go at, but it's been there since lockdown. I've done nothing. But anyway, going to the National Portrait Gallery, I realised that there's like this engagement between the sitter and the painter. And I could see that in some of my shots. And it's that sitting and that gazing, and it's the eyes that tell the story. So I just thought I'd put that in and explain that. That's another Platon-inspired portrait. So Lord Bath, bless him, he passed away, was it last year or the year before? I was one of the lucky ones who was invited into Longleat to photograph for a book. He was doing a book on his beautiful waistcoat. So we spent the day with Lord Bath. Took us all around Longleat, but he had to stay in his apartment, so we had to shoot in his apartment. I spent all day shooting a whole range of pictures with him, and when he passed away, they got in contact with me and used my artwork. Actually, if you go onto his website, still it's got one of my pictures with a composite image. And the reason why I put this one in, because it's one of those bookings that you get that you don't really know what's going on. And I turned up and they said, right, James, this is where you're going to work. And I said, where? And they said, there. So on the left-hand side, you've got all the businessmen eating. On the right-hand side, I'm doing lunch and stuff like that. And they said, you're going to shoot there. So I've got to shoot with people there and there. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do. And I could just see this beautiful, I think it was brown, red, ochre sort of leatherette suite or whatever it was. And I had a round LED light, which I use quite a bit. Me and Jack use quite a bit, don't we? And what I was doing is holding the camera, and I was just moving the light around like this, and just keep on taking pictures all the time, moving in and out and around. It's quite a good technique to get lots of different shots out of one model. And then I put it into this position, and the theatrical lighting up is something that I also do quite a bit with for clients. So yeah, challenges of being a photographer today. I suppose the main challenge today is it's really saturated. When I went into photography, it wasn't so bad, but anybody who's going into photography now, it's just a flooded market. Everybody's a photographer, taking pictures. Trying to find work is very challenging. So you have to diversify and stick out and stand out in front of the crowd a little bit more. Also, when I was younger, when I came out of university, photographers really had a skill. They had to learn their craft. So the reason why they got paid the big bucks was because you had to not only know how to shoot the shot, you had to understand that. So for example, I would use an RB67 medium format camera, but with the RB67, when you cranked the lens out, you had bellows. So you had to compensate when you were doing it. You had to compensate the distance of the bellows, which could be half a stop or more, as I found out on various locations. And then, so you had to learn that process, but also part of the process, you had to know how to take the films out of the camera. So when the films came out of the camera, you'd say a front clip or a rear clip. And then when you went to the lab, you would say to the lab, can you do a front clip on that? So they take a clip off the front of the film, because in your mind, you'd made notes that that was slightly light, I think, so I'm going to make it darker. So you'd pull and push a film. And that was the skill for photographers then. You had to know that your Polaroid was only a rendition of part of the shots, but not really what you were going to get. And then you knew that your films had to come through customs, through X-rays, and you didn't know whether they're going to be fogged. So it was quite a challenge. So a photographer's life in those days was not just about taking pictures, the whole of the process that you had to manage and to make right for a client. And I had one occasion where I got all these films. I've been in Portugal working, and I got all these films going through, and I remember putting one on the box like that, light box, with a Chinograph pencil, and just marking it off and think, that's a little bit dark, that is. So I just put it in the box and said we didn't shoot that, we forgot that. Anyway, so moving on. So commercial advertising. So I've done quite a bit of commercial advertising work, and you won't see much of that on my website, but I actually got commissioned to do work for Superdrug. So so we had a shoot in London for 5 days with 7 models, and it was all about creating covers for boxes. Doesn't sound that glamorous, but the whole shoot was as big as anything else. It just ended up on a box that big. But this is where I wouldn't retouch myself, because the skin had to be perfect and the hair. So for example, we started off with the model sitting up and propping the hair up. It didn't work. So my idea was to lay the model on the floor, and I'd stand like this, take pictures of her. But to make the hair look right, we put fake hair underneath it. And in the end, I sent it off to Lithuania, Estonia, to a retoucher who did the hair. So the hair is, as you can tell, is quite fake. It's not real at all. If I showed you I should have put the original. If you saw the original of this, it just doesn't look the same. The skin does, however. And then this is another version. So the reason I put this in here is because when you're doing this type of thing, there's a lot of retouching that happens on faces that is destructive retouching. So your pixels are gone and things like that. This isn't. This is non-destructive retouching. It's using the model's face. So she was chosen because she had the perfect skin for this shot. And that's what, yeah, and that's it really, basically. So a bone of contention, a stuffed zebra. So I sometimes get asked to do a job, and you have to make a decision on the day, are you going to do the job or not? Because you can walk away if you're not happy, but it's not a good thing to do. So at this place at Ainhoe Park, eclectic mix of stuffed animals all over the place on the walls and everything like that. And this was a stuffed zebra on rocking horse legs like this. And in the end, I decided to do it. But when I put the pictures out, probably just before lockdown, I was getting a little bit of trolling going on, because obviously it's not a nice thing to do. Although that one was acceptable in a way, but actually thinking back on it, it wasn't. I've done a few shoots like that where I've turned up and I've had to do the shoot and then just delete all the files because I just needed the money at the time. So this was my first campaign that won me the Superdrug. So this is a Midlands-based company called Umberto. I was booked through London, and this is all my own retouching and colour balancing, and I actually did the product shot as well. So I've done products in the past. When I first left university, did products and packaging. So from this, I got all the e-commerce stuff. Another Superdrug job because of that one. So this is a bit of a process. So chose the models. It's all about face packs. So here we had to create a shape on the face that was consistent. And then in Photoshop, so we painted it on in the right way. In Photoshop, I put the gradient on the background, so I masked it off. So that was a pure white background. And then the final product was this. I didn't realize that I found this out the other day when I was putting this together. The agency won an award with it, and I didn't get credit for it. All I did was get paid. But basically, the client came to me with the artwork and said, I don't know what we're going to do here, James. Can you sort us out? So I sorted them out and did all the art directing, and they got all the kudos. But apparently, 48% increase on sales in the first week. The first week had paid off the amount of money they did for production, which is phenomenal, really. This is for the Umberto Genie again. They wanted a shot that was a point of sale or a stopper in boots. So this is a composite of half a dozen images with a model who was shot in Bristol. So I've done the composition on this myself. So this would be behind the products in front of it. Cinematic lighting is something that I've mentioned, and I do mention quite a bit. It's very simple. You know, there is the 3-point lighting system, but you can create the same effect with one light. So for example, here, this was done for a dress company, a dress designer. I have a little play myself. So first exposure is for the ambient lighting in the room to get because I like to include everything. If you use flash, sometimes you can blast it out. So using film lighting, I used a redhead or ARRI light, so it's hot light, 800 watt. You know, you can burn your hands on them, but they produce just this creamy effect on the skin. It's just amazing. So first of all, ambient exposure to get the lighting in the room, and then I just threw the redhead on it, but I've got barn doors on it. So for example, I think I'm doing here, there's one barn door and one barn door there. And what I've done is I've twisted the barn doors like this, and I'm using and splitting light in the room. So that's how you can use one light. There's a couple of other shots what I'll point out on the fine art where it's just one light. And that really is to demonstrate the technique of 3-point lighting, or using film lighting when it goes into black and white. It's reminiscent of film noir, which is where I studied all of my work when I was early into photography. And I particularly like all of this, you know, this moody lighting. It's just me, cinematic lighting. I put this in because it's an example of uplighting with an LED light. So 2 LED lights. I've got assistant here, assistant there, holding the lights up. And these are these £45, £50 Amazon lights as well. And what I did is I went into the camera settings and went on the spectrum and turned it into blue, made it cooler, and enhanced it in Photoshop. But they use this for point of sale or something like that. It's just their idea at the time. This is another demonstration of lighting. So this is it with flash this time. So on the actual face here, in the tops of the hands, you can see I'm using a beauty dish with a slightly reflective inside, so it's punching out a little bit more light into the face, creating a bit more contrast, where the rest of it is slightly, you know, softer underneath. So it just created a bit more of an interest in the picture, which could have been quite a bland picture, to be honest. Yeah, another headshot, but I'm not going to talk about that. So what I'm going to talk about is a snake. So snake venom is used in this product Dermatox to tighten the skin around the eyes. And the client was very adamant that she really wanted to have a snake. And I think it does come from, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if that's a garter snake or something like that. But anyway, that particular snake. But there was no evidence of any stock images, so I had to go around Google, finding up to 15 images of snakes in those positions, and I chopped them together and I liquefied them into position to create that look. And this is just a very simple shot for Vodka Revolution bars. You've probably heard of them. It was just a point of sale and social media and everything like that. It's just a pretty shot with film lighting once again. So I'll come on to Editorial Location, which is probably what I really prefer to do. I love to go to a location. And for me, when you get to a location, for me, studio work is really tricky. So you can throw lights on it, but there's only so many ways you can make it look. So, but going to a location, whatever the location is great, because, you know, even in here, you start looking around and the client say, "What are we going to do here, James?" I go, "Jack, what are we going to do here?" And they start looking around and say, "Oh, well, there's a piano over there." You have to really think about the location, because they're all behind you going, "Well, it's up to you now. We've got everybody here. It's up to you." And there's quite a lot of that coming up. So I like locations because the challenge is great. Yeah. I just put that in. You can have a read of that. I won't go through it because it might bore you, but there you go. Oh yeah, portfolios are now online. So at one time, I would call up an agency on a Monday. For example, I was talking to one outside, John from TBWA Manchester. I'd go, "John, can I come and see you? I've got some new work." "Yeah, come up at 11 o'clock on Thursday. I've got half an hour for you." You do that. Now you can call somebody up. They don't want to see you. Just send me an email. Send me your portfolio. You can't get through the door. The gatekeepers are tremendously good. You can't get through. And so it's all online. So everything's online, but it's great because you can create a portfolio. If you created the old-fashioned portfolio way is to create a book, you'd have your name embossed on it. And you can still do this. Just still do this. I've still got a couple of these books. And you'd hike them all the way around to all the different companies, and you'd say, "Look at this," and they flick through it. But they just don't want to see you now. They just say, "Send me a link," or "What's your Instagram?" And they'll look at your Instagram. Well, hold on, that's not my portfolio. That's just pictures I take. Anyway, so there you go. So creative concepts and ideas. So a lot of my research, I would go out and I'd buy £50 worth of magazines every month. So I'd buy Italian Vogue, Marie Claire, you name it, I'll try and get it. Mainly Italian Vogue was the best in the days when I was doing it. And to learn some of my lighting as well as the film lighting, I'd get Italian Vogue and I'd open it up on a picture and I'd get a model in when I was a student and just say, right, stand there. And I would keep on looking at that. That's it, and they'll start working around that. So Italian Vogue was one of the ways I learned some of my lighting. But now you can just go onto Instagram, Pinterest, and websites. That's basically everything's out there, or Behance, or all these different networks. That's how I do my referencings now. So stoppers. Stoppers are what clients like because it stops the flow of a page. It stops people walking through an airport lounge because of beauty products or whatever. They're called stoppers. So this was a Birmingham client. It's called the Bespoke Tailor. He does all of the London clients, the Mayor of London, all these different things. And he wanted to create this bigger presence for himself. So he commissioned me, and this is done at the Laurent Perrier Suite, which is in central Birmingham. And it actually is a pointed room like that with glass. And it's actually a shot. There's no composition really, only a little bit. But so we got the position, we got the light, it's all daylight, it's all coming through the window. But the problem was when he looked at the picture, he said, "This is fantastic, but it's Birmingham." I said, "Well, actually, that's because we're in Birmingham. What do you want?" He said, "You can't just drop me a bit of New York in there." I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll give it a go." So I came back with that. I was happy as Larry. So for me, some of the perspectives aren't right on the landscape, but it was on my social media. It's been one of my best shots. People love it because it's a bit unusual. So this is an example of a shot where there's nothing in this shot to set the shot. So this was up in Blackpool again. It's for a London menswear campaign. Because I like locations, I know a lot of the locations that I want to shoot in. So this was exactly at the last hour of the day, and we tried to get this shot of the guy jumping, and he just happened to, in the last few moments, he managed to get this look and this style, the glasses, the presence of the face, the arms and the legs, and the left leg hanging down a little bit more was great because there's a bit of connection to the stairway, but that shadow is exactly as it was. There's no Photoshop on that at all. Honestly, there isn't. So you can see, I just love that shot because it's just animated. But this is really my mantra. So when I talk to people on my blog or my magazine now, because I'm interviewing photographers around the world and creatives, my mantra is light, shape and form. So when people say, "What is photography?" to me, I say it's just light, shape and form. And what do you mean by that? So if I needed to photograph that, it's just light, shape and form. I can photograph anything, and most people should be able to photograph anything from rooms to bottles to products to people. It's just thinking about what you're doing with your shapes and how you put your light in, and you can photograph anything. And that's the truth. Work in progress at the moment. Verity me is I'm actually a director in this business. I've got 20% share in this business, and it's a new brand from scratch. So I'm the creative director and we are developing the brand. So this is an example where the client or my client or whatever you'd like to go with, my business partners wanted something different from the shot. Yeah, it's a great shot, but it doesn't look very much like Bali. That's because we're in Surrey and Henstead Gardens, so it's never going to look like Bali. No, but we're supposed to go there, but COVID stopped us doing it. Okay, fine, what do you want me to do? Can you just zhuzh it up a little bit? So I stuck some flowers on there, and it's just work in progress. I just thought I'd show that, the little butterfly and everything just here. I don't know if you can see it. I've got to carry on with that anyway. So yeah, this is like working on the fly. So as I was saying, when I was in Iceland, Iceland's such an organic, vast country in terms of the way things look. When you're on we had a train of camper vans, so there's 5 camper vans, there's 27 people. And I'm going from one location that I didn't want to shoot in because the client wanted to do it, and I'm going to another one that I don't want to shoot in because it's getting to 6:30 at night, there's no light left. And I just look out the window and say, stop, reverse up, jump out, and you saw in the video clip, there's a little bit of me working. It's only because of the pink dress and the grey background, so you have to work on the fly very quickly. And sometimes these are the shots that clients say we don't want, but they always have in the end. A lot of the shots I've taken in between shots or something, we don't want them rubbish, not into. Oh, can we just have a look at that shot? Oh, that's quite good, we'll have that. Yeah, but you haven't paid for that one. So I'd say observation, observation, observation. So it's a little bit when I say about location, I like location. So for example, this is done for the Bespoke Tailor again at another location. So this could be quite a bland shot. I actually don't think it is, but I think it could be a bland shot. So for example, if he was standing, I don't know if you do that, you put your hand across it, if he's just standing on that background, it would look really bland. And what I did is I just put the line through his head, which you're not supposed to do, and I put the low lighting down below and shone up. I just created something a bit different. I did a bit of Photoshop on it, post-production. So it's looking at the location and trying to read the location and just mix it up. Because if you look at a location and shoot it as it is sometimes, it just doesn't work. But if you look for a low angle or something like it changes. So observation again. So this was when I was on location in Croatia, and I'm not name dropping. It was part of a campaign. This is the biggest campaign that I did ever, but it was a great campaign. And the girl was just standing there. We just finished doing a shoot in the lake, which we hadn't got passes for. So for example, when you work on a German production, you never get passes, you never get permits. You're always asked to do something you're not supposed to. And actually, it's the first time I've ever thrown my toys out the pram and walked off. I said, when you get a permit, I'll do it. I've never done that. I never do that. I'm not that type of photographer. But anyway, we're getting through this shoot, and she was standing there looking out and like this, smoking a cigarette. And I just said, Agnes, can you just drop your cigarette down and look this way? Because when I'm working, I always stand with my camera like this or under my arm like that. For some reason, it's just the way I work. And she knew exactly what was going to happen. So she just dropped it like that. And I said, look this way. She just turned and that was the shot. I took one shot and that was it. And they used it. I love it. It's one of my favourite shots. It's got that presence about it. So this was in the Roman Arena in Pula, Croatia. This is about finding time with clients. So clients will try to restrict your time where you take pictures. And if you go outside of their shooting and what they're expecting you to shoot for them, they get a little bit tetchy. As you can understand, they're paying you to do their work. So what I do is I time barter. I'll put more in during the day to get the time that I need. If I've seen something that I'd like to get, and I'll do a barter with them. I'll do this if you let me do that. Oh, go on then, James, off you go. So I put time in that day and got everything completed. They were doing a wrap. I said, right, I think her name was Fel. She was a Czech model. I said, come on, let's go off. So I spent an hour. I did 3 60 gig cards on a Nikon. I just got through them all full. And I got so much of my own stuff. So for me, working with clients, it's really important, if I like the shot, to get my own shots as well, because sometimes you're on an NDA and you can't use the shots, you can't use them wherever. So you have to have some sort of sign off that you can get something of your own. I do anyway, don't I? Yeah. So I know this might be a bland shot to some of you, and it's a bland shot to me in a way, but the reason I put it in is because the client says to you, it's the last shot of the day, James, what are you going to do? Oh, what do you mean? What am I going to do? Well, we've got this corner of the room here to work in. I go, okay, fine. Let me have a think about it. So go away, think about it. Okay, there's 2 metal plates on the wall. It's got a bit of symmetry going on there. How can I make that difference? Put your hands out, Max. Puts his hands out. No, that doesn't look right. There's a sofa on one and there's not on the. So we drag the sofas in, put the light up top. All of a sudden, you got a shot that the client can use. In the end, I quite liked it myself, just because it's a menswear. He was quite a famous guy, actually, at the time. So fine art, I'm just getting into fine art at the moment. Over the last 15 years, I've been touted by fine art companies all over the world, from New York to recently Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and never really done too much towards it. I've worked towards it, but never really committed to it. And I'm going to go more for fine art, because I'm finding that client work is depicting the way my portfolio looks. So my work is quite eclectic. If you look on the website, it's eclectic because it's this client, that client, the other client. And the only way I can minimize that is not putting a lot of this stuff in. But I thought it's quite relevant. But with fine art, it allows me to be the client. I can actually think about a concept and work on the concept. And Jack's drilled that into me, actually. You need to do your own stuff. So this was just a picture, and I've done this in Photoshop, so it's not painted the model. So I've worked on posterization and solarization, which I used to do in the darkroom years ago in print. So I've done this, and I just played around with it a little bit. So this is one of the art pieces that I sold. This is lit with one light, again, with barn doors that are moved out into position. So this actually sold. It was at 5 by 4 feet. With the glass diasect behind it, and it's hanging somewhere in Rotterdam in one of these great big art buildings, which was great. And this was just before lockdown. I thought, great, I got 6 pictures with them. They were putting them into art shows and stuff like that. And this was the other one. That's lit with one light as well, but it's film lighting. So it's one simple redhead with barn doors that's done that, and then I split the barns off to hit the background. Same again. This was in Croatia, and it was for a shot for the client. He didn't like the shot, so I said, can I do some of my own? I'm going to turn this into a bit fine art, and that actually is a backbone of something. I don't know what it was, but they decided it was nice. So analog style, I like analog. So I like old-fashioned printing, and I like black and white printing. I don't do any black and white printing at the moment, although if I could get access to a darkroom. I mean, my process was ag for papers, selenium toning, ag for film, T-Max, Kodak, you name it. I'd go through it, and I'd get through so much paper because there was no Photoshop. You had to get it right in the darkroom. And I tried to build this back into my digital pictures. So creating bits of texture and finding software that will allow me to create this analog style in my work. This is going online at the moment. And this is my own work, which is a place in Preston that was 1930s cafe. I went in there and I actually hand coloured this, and I think I colour washed it with the old way of doing it, which was tea bags, tea staining, so like this, and then just painted it by hand and then photographed it again. So a little bit more quirky, but this is for a London client called Biddle Sawyer Silks. So they have silks, they're in the centre of London, and they wanted to create a campaign that really introduced them to London. So they came from Manchester, set up in London. So they created this set for me, and once again, I said to the client, you know, at lunchtime, do you mind if I do some of my own stuff? Yeah, no problem. What you got in mind? So I don't know, I'm going to just work it out. So got the model to stand there. The makeup was done. The hair was done specifically for this. And in an hour, I said, I think she looks like a puppet. Can you just create like this puppet look? And I'll do the post-production afterwards. Oh, I can't really see that. So no, just do this. So I directed the model to look like that. And then I actually made it look like that. So I put the puppet joints on and the strings and stuff, and put a little bit more of shafts of light, and then I put a little Incy Wincy spider, Black Widow spider, little Miss Tuffet there. That's just having a little play around with the composite work. And then personal work, as I said before, this is going into a potential NFT, and it's black and white, and it's just to finish off the section, really, I think. So research again. So as I said, I'm very much driven by film and cinematic lighting and films and Kodak. So one of the great films of Kodak was Kodachrome 64. It had a beautiful texture to when you shot skin, it had a lovely glow to it. And it was, I don't know if you know what Kodachrome 64 was. You'd take the picture, you'd have to send it off to Kodak in a packet, and it would come back to you as slides. So it's a slide film. So I wanted to emulate this. So this is using one film white again. And this is just replicating a Kodachrome. So the last section here is compositing. So when I first went into photography, I used to do a lot of compositing. I'd use a lot of different pictures to create one picture that would then go out for clients' work. And that's how I got a lot of my work. So I remember one agent saying to me at one time, you can create the most creative out there work, but you'll end up working for British Home Stores at the time. So I don't understand that. Why would, yeah, because you can do that, they want you to do that. And it's true. I got jobs with Matalan, Boots, all this type, from the most quirkiest of work. And I just developed it after that into, yeah, just sort of telling that, yeah, here we go. So this is, I managed to get a contract which was for a German company. It was 30 days in 12 locations around Europe, ending up in Ibiza, taken in London, Epping Forest, and it was all about the goddess of Europe. So Lambertz is a giant company, a bit like Thornton's in Germany. They've been going for 200 or 300 years, and they do 1,000 lines. And every year they produce a calendar. And I know that's a dirty word, calendar, but it's an art calendar, a fine art calendar. And so, as I said before, sometimes they bring a direct booking in, which is a celebrity. Ralph Muller, somebody from Gladiator, you know, when he goes, my name's Maximus Decimus Meridian, Ralph's on the side there, so we photographed him. But anyway, Dieter von Teese was flown over for the day. I had to work with her for 4 hours. The horse was doped up because it was on the edge of a cliff, 100 feet up. They wanted her to sit on the top. And I said to the client, I'm not doing that. You can't put her on the edge of the cliff with a horse that's doped up for a start off, because it could be trouble. So anyway, I said, don't worry, I'll do it in post-production. So this is a composite image. So the birds aren't real. The clouds have been enhanced. The background's been stretched. But the head's from a different part of the horse. So in a couple of the shots, the head was up. But most of the shots, as you saw in the video, it's down. I didn't know the horse was doped. I just thought it was miserable, didn't want to do the job. But and then I had to put extra ears on it from another part of the horse. And of course, those are pigeon wings, because I don't think I've ever seen a horse like that. And this was like their flagship of the pictures. So I used location flash. I used 2 heads, one on the model and one on the horse. And I did the skies in. So this is beginning of composite work. So this is another one for the calendar. This was at 12,500 feet in Austria at Hintertux, right on the top of the glacier. So you climb up, you get 5 or 6 different cable cars to the top. Then you walk to this position. On the left-hand side over those rocks on the left is a sheer drop down to a lake. And on the right-hand side, you've got all the ice and where they do all the skiing. And the only fake thing in that picture is the bird and the sky enhancement, the rays, but everything else was captured at the time. So on the left-hand side where the rocks are, I've got a team of people holding flashlight up like this, and it's not designed, it's a monolight. It wasn't like the lights we've got now, and they were holding it up. I did this shot to put the light in, and the dog was actually owned by the mountain guide, and he got him to sit there. You can see in the eyes that he's actually calling to the dog, getting his attention. So that was an actual shot. And there was a cable going from that rock to the other one, which I took out in photo, but the bird was put in. She's called Marana, which is a goddess of something, I can't remember. So Petra Nemkova was one of the world's supermodels. I got to work with her. This is supposed to be Tuscany, but it's actually across the road from Stonehenge. So to the left here is the main road, and over there, the other side of that is Stonehenge, and the client just said, can we get one last shot? So, and where the deer are, in the background was a couple of combine harvesters and tractors. So I said, we're never going to make this look like Tuscany, and it doesn't really, but he thought it did. And yeah, so here, obviously the deer are thrown in, but I've lit her with just one light, and you could see in the video, I'm working closely with her, and it's the first example for me where I was working with a really professional model who knew exactly what I wanted to do. So she would consult with me, and then she would just absolutely nail it. And that's what a difference between a model and a top model. They know exactly what they need to do. That's how they get paid the big bucks. So DC3 Iceland, the concept was a crash pilot. It wasn't my concept. I just had to deliver it because it doesn't work, but I like the shot. I don't know if anybody's been to the DC3. It's about 2 to 3 miles walk to the actual plane. And the German production team hadn't got permission, and they had to get everybody there. So what we realised when we went to Iceland, you get up at 5:30 to shoot at 6:30 in the evening. So you spend all day doing nothing. I don't know why, but we always used to get that 5:30, 6 o'clock. And my challenge was to get through the rain, the snow, the darkness and the cold and make a shot look like that. And I realised that the camera, which was a GFX 50S and ProPhoto pack and one light without any light control on just the actual unit, would do it every time. But to get there, we had to transfer, I think there's about 6 or 7 people went there. But he'd put a motorbike in the back of his van because they drove from Germany all the way over to the ferry and took it. So in the back of his van, he'd got a motorbike, which you're not supposed to do. So we transferred all of us on motorbike to there. By this time, the light was going, and I had to create the shot. And not just that, if you've been there, you know that there's always hordes of people around there. And so we had to get people to clear it out. And I got 15 minutes to do my own thing. Somebody else did something else, and that was that. So this was shot on the top of the ice, on the top of the glacier, where I did the shot with the dog. If you came down a little bit on the right-hand side, there was an opening into the side of the glacier. And as you went through, there were tunnels of ice and dripping water. And I actually shot this just with that same, the LED light's that big, that wide. It's got one battery on. You dial it in, and that was just held like that and just moved it around. That was the shot. So in post-production, I've put the ice on the skin and the ice in the background, but you can probably just see here, it was an ice tunnel. You see the little bits of there, and there's a part, so we're actually standing on an ice floor with a sheer drop down into an ice lake. They didn't tell us that until after, so health and safety in the UK, you could never do it, but there you got away with it. This is an example of 27 shots comped together. So the girl was shot in the arena in Pula, Croatia. And then this is the Plitvich Lakes, which is the Garden of Eden. It's absolutely, truly beautiful, exactly what you can see, except I couldn't get everything in. So I just shot all of the elements on a Hasselblad, the bark, the greenery, the leaves, everything, even the little, what's that called, a little jetty in the background to create a little story for one of the calendar pictures. And yeah, so 27 images brought together. Shot in Iceland, you're not allowed to go onto the moss at all, but our guys said you'd be okay. So for me, the reason why I put this in on composition is that she's got different feet. So her original feet were all claw-like because it was that cold. I mean, it was literally bitterly cold, and she was there. So for me, she's actually lying on a rock, and it doesn't look like she is. So it looks like she's just arching her back and hanging there. But I will be doing, like in my YouTube and on my blog, I'll be going back through this and redeveloping the post-production on it and filling this gap with the greenery to make it look a little bit more natural. But it was a great shot at the time. The reason why I put this one in is because it's another composite shot, as you can tell, because there wasn't a big head in the background. But this is at Stonehenge. It's another shot. This is Petra Nemkova again. She was getting in the car and they said, we need one more shot before you go because you're costing us a lot of money. Can you do one more? And I was packing it around. Oh, okay, come on then, Phil, let's go and do this then. What do you want? We need another shot. I said, where are you going to do it? We're going back over to Stonehenge? No, we're going to go into the boardroom. Right? Got to go into the boardroom and get a shot there. So I happened to have a grey background in the van. Their van, not mine. And I got her to stand on in the conference room, background down. I did 100 shots of her just doing different movements. And in my mind, I had to conjure up what was going to happen. The German client never comes with any really great concept boards and mood boards. In fact, I thought I should bring one because it's like 3 pictures. So can you do this, James? And I go, well, yeah. But it's always down to me, take advantage of me because of the creative mindset, trying to think, okay, if we do this, composite that and light in here, we'll get something out of it. And that's pretty much how I've worked with these guys. And it worked for them. Dita Von Teese, she's like one of the main burlesque dancers in the world. She was married to Marilyn Manson. She's quite a celebrity in America. I got to work with her, as I said before, and she was shot in Ibiza. So I'd finished off the campaign, come all the way through Epping Forest, back all the way, and then we got on a flight and flew off to Ibiza for the night for a 4-hour, 5-hour shoot the next day. I worked with her, and she was basically on a tree. We cut her off the tree, put the mountains of Hintertux in and the rainbow. So that's a composite. Skin's been retouched, and that's how she goes around in life, you know, with retouched skin. So I think this is the final shot for this. So this is, I think it's Skogafoss in Iceland. So the rainbow is actually real. That's not Photoshop, that's actually real because we were getting it drenched, completely drenched. On the right-hand side, where all the rocks are, if you'd seen the shots previously, that was just full of people in red and yellow Macs and stuff like that. So we had to clear the area, and I literally got 5 minutes to do that shot. And it worked okay, so I've got lighting on there. I've got the assistant holding that same light up again, right up high, pointing down onto the model to create that top light. As I said before, I always have this top light. It always works. It creates a sense of interest and drama. And then the only thing is she's got a different head and different hands from a different shot because the client didn't like the way her hands were and didn't like the look in the face, but he liked that shot. I said it's the same as everything else, just a hand's slightly different. So I had to change everything. And there you go, finished. So that's me. If you got any questions, you're welcome to ask them if you have any. But I quite enjoyed that, actually. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I was quite nervous about doing it. But I know it's not like normal stuff, you know, like some of the fine art stuff, but it's just a little bit different, a bit more commercial. This is about making money and enjoying yourself and get some great stuff at the same time.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you. Thank you for your talk. I was quite amazed when I saw, even from your website, just the immense sort of vast range of work that you do, and all the different campaigns and different styles that you have on there, which you'll probably see on the slide. So our first question, I just want to go from the beginning, was what kind of, in particular, got you into photography? Was it like a family influence or?
Yeah, my father had an old Pentax camera and an old beat-up lens that used to be in the bottom cupboard in the hallway. And every time he disappeared out of the house, I'd get the camera out, play around with it, damage it, and put it back in. And I think the first time he actually said to me, "Oh, go and have a go with it," was on the Queen's Silver Jubilee. So I'm showing my age now. He said, "You can go and use it." And I remember putting a roll of film in and shooting it. I never saw the results of it. I don't even know if it came out or anything, but that's how I sort of got into it. And then I was at school and I was more painter, illustrator at the time, and I was quite interested in airbrushing. So I started to airbrush cars, and not real cars, but on paper. I did art, and it was a guy, my art teacher, said to me, what are you going to do with your career? So I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest. Have you ever thought about a foundation course? And on the foundation course, I was doing all these different things and weird and wonderful things, and there was actually a period where I took some pictures of the girlfriend, and I did some really cheesy vignetting and stuff like that, you wouldn't do now. And people liked it, so that's how it developed. So then I applied for a photographic BA honours degree, so I got a first in that. But yeah, that's how I went into photography, and then it's just developed bit by bit. So as I went in, it started as products and stills and all sorts of things, and then I sort of developed into fashion advertising.
Actually, my next question, which was, what is it about fashion that led you to choose that as opposed to, say, documentary or any other genres?
I think when I was at university in the first year or two, I did social commentary and documentary style. And I've done a little bit recently with my iPhone. When we've been out with Jack, we've been to different things. I've been documenting. I've got a good friend now who is a street photographer in Geneva, and he's trying to push me. So I did that. But I don't know. It sort of developed. I like the feeling of being able to direct and create. And I think it's about the lighting, and I like the sort of input into how I can make things look. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've really got there with what I'm doing, because a lot of the work, as I said, a lot of the work that I do is driven by clients' work. Mm-hmm. It's only now that I'm starting to think about, well, hold on, where's all my work? And I look at my website and I don't really like it. I don't really like much of the work because it's not really me. Mm-hmm. There's some pieces of work, like I said when I was talking, there's that one picture of the guy. I said, it's things like that that sort of inspire me a little bit more. And I see a lot of fine art photographers. There's a fine art photographer called Bastian Wood at the moment, and he's doing predominantly fine art pictures, but he just goes off and does his own thing. But I just feel, for me, working with people. So whilst I've done fashion, I've done a lot of lifestyle and people. So I like working with people. That's really what it is. So fashion is just a name, but I spent a long time working on lifestyle with Getty, shooting stuff. So it's all, all the stock stuff that you could see. In fact, I posted something on a little website. It's a woman holding turnips like this in a greenhouse. That's not fashion, but it's when I look at how I've lit it, and I like it. It's just creating something that I like, really.
Like having your sort of more active input.
Yeah, I like to have an input in it. It's about the light. As I said, when I look at those two pictures now, it's light again for me. When I look at that, the guy on the left-hand side, that's a commercial shot for a client. But actually, it's me shooting a shot that he likes, but it's what I want to capture.
Okay, cool. You mentioned quite a few times in my introduction as well that your style is cinematic.
Yeah.
That's a really sort of catchy. It's very descriptive of what you do. Very apt. But what are your influences, not just in the photographic industry, but in the film industry as well?
I suppose I'm very much an avid viewer, up until recently, of film noir. I love the old classic films, apart from Gladiator. I don't know why, but for some reason, the recent Gladiator, I like that when he goes Maximus Decimus. I just like that bit. I only watched that bit. But anyway, my father used to go to the cinema. He lived abroad. He's from abroad. He used to go to the cinema 3 or 4 times a week. And he developed a liking of the old-fashioned, not the old-fashioned, but the older films, Burt Lancaster and all these. And I got brought up on it. And I really like watching the lighting in some of these classic Hitchcock films. I suddenly just see it on screen and my eyes just see shapes and lights. And I think, oh yeah, it's just something I quite like. I don't know.
Vintagey.
Yeah, vintage feel to it. I find a lot of fashion work these days is quite bland and the same. It's called the London style. It was the heroin chic. Now it's just everybody wants to take a picture in front of black railings, and I don't really. I suppose I'm maybe falling out a little bit of love of taking fashion pictures. If it's a quirky I like avant-garde style photography and clothing. And if a lot of my models are booked by clients, but I would choose a more androgynous looking female. you know, that dresses differently. And I suppose if you look at some of the Gucci work and some of the higher level brands, I know there's a level above those guys, but when you look at those pictures, they're where photographers, my classic photographers like Peter Lindbergh and I can't remember all of their names, but they shoot in a certain style. And when I was at university, I aspired to be like these photographers, Chen for Vogue, and I don't know, photographers from the 90s. But Peter Lindbergh was my mentor in terms of watching what he did. But yeah, I like the quirky stuff. Miles Davis. There's a lot of photographers. I love their work, but it doesn't necessarily pay my bills at the moment. However, I know that if I make the transition into fine art, then I know that it's about doing it for how I want to do it, and that will draw in what I need potentially.
And obviously you mentioned you have such a vast experience that obviously technology and social media has evolved during your time in these industries. So you mentioned it kind of made some aspects easy, but could you elaborate on also any challenges that sort of increase technology and social media in this industry?
It's just that it's like, for example, if you're on Instagram, I mean, I'm moaning to Jack all the time about Instagram. At one time, it was great because you put a picture out there and you get 1,000 or 2 likes on what you're doing. It was all about likes and stuff like that. So technology controls how you feel about your work. So recently, because my likes were dropping, because I was too focused on that, I switched off the like count. So I can now go back to posting what I want to post that suits me. So I think that's one of the negative aspects of it. And Facebook and all this stuff doesn't work. The good thing is that you don't need portfolios anymore. You can put them all online. I mean, it's quite a cost to create a portfolio. It could cost you £1,000 to build your book, you choose your colour, put your pages in it, print your book off and everything. And then you have to keep on, that was quite an expensive process with your bag, with your logo on it and everything. But I think the process is that, well, for example, you could go out now and somebody could go, and I know somebody who did this to prove a point to me because we got into a little bit of an argument. Somebody I worked in a production company with, he says, I want you to take pictures of models because it'll make money for the company. And I said, well, I don't really want to do that. I did that 15, 20 years ago, test shots. So I went away, came back, and he says, well, I've actually set up a company, I'm doing it. I said, what are you going to do? So I went out and bought a camera from Curry's. I said, well, do you know how to use manual mode? He said, no, I just put everything auto focus, auto everything. And he actually proved a point. He went out and he's developed a brand, taking pictures of models and charging them 350 quid. And I'm sat there looking at his 15,000 followers on Instagram from scratch thinking, oh, well, actually, he's proved me completely wrong. So he's embraced the technology. So I think technology is great. I would say that technology has made me a better photographer than I was. So when I was a film photographer, and I was saying before about all the techniques of doing film and process and everything, it's quite laborious and challenging to not just do the job for the client, but worry about how you've done the job for the client. Whereas now you can look at it and go, oh, delete that. Yeah, we like that. Yeah, we'll carry on. And it's instant. And then I would go into a darkroom for a client. So I was noted for doing black and white. I would process my own black. So I'd go on a campaign for Chiro menswear, and I'd come in cases of film, bags of film. They'd tell me to get what I need. I'd have 400 ASA, it wasn't ISO, 400, 100, 125. I'd have Polaroids, I'd have colour, I'd have prints, at 3200 T-Max, trying to accommodate everything. But now you can just go out with one camera, a couple of cards, and it's all done. So technology has got better. And then I'd process it in the darkroom. And I'd say to him, I've been to the lab, and I'd have 2 developing tanks like this at home. So I'd do it at home. I wouldn't go into a lab. I'd get these 2 developing tanks, and I worked out I could get 2 rolls of 120 on one spool. And then I'd be doing this, watching the television for clients, doing that, making sure you do that, banging it on the table. Because if you didn't do that, you get little air bubbles on the negative that you couldn't get rid of. We're now photo. And you do that, and then I'd do contact prints in the cupboard. I'd present them to the clients that I've been to the lab, and I'd charge a lab price, even though it didn't cost them. But I wouldn't miss that now, and I wouldn't necessarily miss the dark room. Although I'd want to get into dark room, do my own thing, but I definitely want to. I won't want to do that for clients now. So I am a digital darkroom processor type, and that has been a benefit to me.
Yeah. Next question here is: obviously you've shot many campaigns, many locations, and many models. Is there a particular campaign or location or subject that was your favourite, or that you kind of would be able to get into?
I think the Lambertz Goddess tour, because it was such a big campaign. It was 30 days, and it started in Well, actually, I drove. Me and my assistant, we drove all the way around. We hired a car, filled it full of our kit. They had 3 big vans, and we met them in Aachen in Germany. So we travelled all across to get to there, and then we went from there to Hintertux, Austria, and then from there we went Slovenia, Slovakia. So we went through all these countries, so we got to see everything, all those types of things, got to see all of this stuff, and got to photograph lots of different people, lots of different locations. So for me, it was a great challenge that I met, and I really enjoyed it. But I did really enjoy that portrait session that I mentioned with Ryan, where there was that Platon feeling of interaction where I didn't direct him, it just happened. That's something I've never done before, and I really enjoyed that.
Actually, so obviously you mentioned you have a YouTube channel and your blog as well. So obviously you're doing lots of stuff away from commercial projects, but I was wondering, have you ever done or have you ever thought of doing any sort of so-called passion projects, so like, like raising social awareness or anything like that, or would you consider doing one in the future?
No, I've always wanted to do something like that, but opportunity's never really thrown itself in front of me. So I know I've had a few people who get in contact who say, I've got this problem, would you be willing to help out? And I've gone, yes. I never hear anything else about it for whatever reason. And I know it's not for money, but it's about getting involved in doing so. So I'm quite open to do that, because I think sometimes it's good to give back, and giving back by doing something also encourages your creativity to do something else. Otherwise, you're just focused on clients' work who tell you what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, even tell you how you're going to do it. It's only that your lighting makes it different. The styling comes in, the stylist comes in and puts the stuff. So you feel like you're doing something creative, but you're not in control, So passion projects would be good. And I think fine art for me is a way of taking a little bit of ownership back of what I do. I know it sounds like a terrible thing, but when I went into photography, I didn't realise I was going to be a commercial photographer, and that means fashion, because at the end of the day, fashion work is for a client, isn't it? And you're getting paid for it, unless you do editorial. So, for example, if you did editorial for Vogue, it's £80 a page. I've got a family, I've got a house, a mortgage, and so it doesn't cover that, does it really? But then that takes away the passion, and I think it's Jack in our numerous trips up and down the motorway to various venues where he said, you've got to have your own project. Oh, yeah, but... And so I've been thinking for 2 years over, like, what is it? And I got into this idea about plastic. So for me, plastic is a big thing. So I did a couple of shots where the girl, I didn't put any of the pictures in, but I did a couple of shots where we went to Blackpool again because she wanted to. And it was about plastic. So all the clothes are plastic and man-made fibres, but it didn't really get what I wanted from it. It became a fashion shoot again. So when I was talking with Jack, the idea of putting somebody on the beach with a pair of flippers, a mask and a pair of nylon underpants or something on a beach is called a stopper, isn't it? Because you open the page and you stop on it and go, what's that all about? That's something I've never done. That's something I want to look at doing and try to tell a story. And I know that Jack has been an instigator in trying to push me to open up and do something like that. I think that's really where I want to get to. Have passion projects and my own projects where I can explore photography again.
And my last question before I open up to everyone else is, if you could start again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? And what advice might you give to aspiring fashion, or any photographers really?
Well, if I started again, I'd be an archaeologist. I wouldn't do photography because I've got this passion, and I'm into big conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So I spend most of my weekends watching, well, I can't actually because the wife won't let me, but when I can, I'm watching YouTube, and I'm watching about UFOs, aliens, conspiracy, but also everything to do with architecture, ancient Egypt, or anything historical like that. So I keep on saying to them, if I came back round again, I would be an archaeologist stroke geologist. Because for me, geology is a great way of understanding how the planet works and about history. So I know I bore the family rigid. Have you seen this? And they go, oh, not again, for God's sake, just go back to photography. So, no, I think anybody who's going into photography, it's a different world. There is a different level above me, and that's having an agent. And I've had a bit of a beef about that today, about having an agent, because they find you the work. But I think going into photography now is all about, and I see it a lot, finding your own presence. So I see a lot of photographers. So for example, on my blog, stroke magazine, it's called Silvergum Type. You can get the link. It's quite interesting, the fact that it shows my mindset, and my mindset is about I started to realise other people create nice things as well. And so I'm looking at their work, and I know somebody might say, oh, that's a great photographer there, you've got to look at his work. And I go, actually, he's never done anything before here, but I really like his Photoshop techniques. So I'm going to feature him. So I'm reaching out to people that attract my attention, not because they're names, but because they do something that interests me. And I feel that is potentially something that other people might find interesting. So find your own little niche and don't become commercialized. Keep on doing your own thing. And I think somebody who has a job and does their own stuff like street photography has a better opportunity because they're not dependent on being a photographer. But as soon as you become a photographer, unless you get into one niche, then you stand a chance to, you deviate away from, and I've done that because I followed the clients. Mm-hmm. And that's probably my one regret, is I followed the clients instead of following my own mojo. And that's one thing I would say is, if you're going to go into photography, go with open eyes, do as much research and as much practicing as you can. I don't shoot a lot of my stuff at the moment because of COVID, you couldn't do anything. So I've only done 4 shoots for myself since COVID in a year, and none of them were here. I haven't put any of them in. They're all right, actually, not too bad. Yeah.
So thank you for answering my questions, but has anyone got any? Yeah, Mark.
What zeitgeist did you? I'll get it. The shot of looking burning on the drop in New York. Where did you get the composite image of the New York city?
Just off. Well, you can use Unsplash these days. I don't know if you know of Unsplash. Unsplash is a free website. You can get your pictures from there, but it was through stock. I used to go onto, I think it was iStock when I did it, which has been bought out by Getty, and Getty's buying everything out, because they're struggling, at one time. Yeah, so it was basically from a stock agency that I got it and dropped it in, cut out all the windows or masked it out and just dropped it in, then take the density down to make it look like it's off in the distance with the light on it and you're in the shape. It's about creating densities and shapes and stuff like that. But I actually like that shot. It's not a very good picture of the original. That's not the original. I couldn't find the original. But yeah, why is there something that, yeah.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, that sort of thing you see on like a 2-page photo magazine, a huge billboard.
Yes.
So I was just wondering about the quality of the stock image. Would that be suitable for it?
See, they baffle you with science. I know this because at one time in my studio up in Preston, so I'm not my studio, my business. This is where the end happened, really, because my business partner said to me, "James, you've got to get back into photography," because I gave up photography to develop from screensavers to. Well, it started off when he came in one day. We used to go to Preston. I used to travel from the Midlands up to Preston. And we used to do work for another company. I didn't know where I was going, had no direction. All I knew was I wanted to be in new media. And he just came and said, "You ever done a website before?" I went, "No." He says, "There's your first one." I went, "Oh, right, okay, what we got to do here?" So it's just visualise. So I became a visualiser. And I forgot where I was going with that, actually. You need to come back. I've just gone off piece there. It's quite good for me, isn't it? Because I'm normally off piece all the time. I'm always all over the place. I think eclectic work comes from an eclectic mind, So I apologise for that. But yeah, I was going to say about the quality. So I would print on an Epson it was an Epson 9800 there, and I remember going to printer. I was trying to do it at 300 DPI, and it would be at this size. The printer says you only need 180 DPI, and I now realise that a 72 DPI on screen, which is screen based, is an A4. And so when I'm supplying pictures, I've worked out all these different things, and you can get away. So you can upscale it. Sometimes when a client's asking for work, I go, "Oh, that's a nice picture." I can take it out of a Fuji and put it into a Nikon picture with all the EXIF information in it, and I just scale it up. And I look, that's all right, you can have that. So you can get away with it at different sizes. So the picture of the bike, of the motorbike, with the guy under the pier in the black and white on the contact sheet, that was shot as film, which is only 120, isn't it? Well, when you're working on screen, they're A4 at 300 DPI. That's your negative, really. So you're working so much bigger. But they actually took that picture and they blew it up to 40 by 30 from just that little negative, and it was fine. Obviously, you can see the not pixels, they're not pixels. It's grain, reticulation in the film, and you can see that. And Yeah, but you can upscale pictures, and there's software to do it as well. But yeah, you're right. You've got to be careful because on screen looks great, but when it's print, you can see the JPEG jaggies and stuff like that if you're not careful. Yeah.
So yeah, it looks nothing like Tuscany, but the picture.
I know it's nothing like it.
Nothing like Tuscany. But my question to you was, so imagine a photographer, a fashion photographer, who wants to go into the industry and wants to work with big brands as you did. So he wants to go and he or she or it wants to go and work with them. How do you get? Do you have to go through an agent? Do you have to be part of an agency? Do you have to call them directly through a number you find on the website? Because I think this is what I encountered personally through meeting photographers and at university when I studied, is that the number one stopper, although they're talented, whatever the fuck, but they cannot get to the client. How do you do that? What is your advice to people that will want to jump into the industry?
Well, the problem you've got is there's the triangle, and I have this problem as well. So I've had agents, and I've lost agents because I get rid of them. If they don't get me any work, I've got rid of them. I've only had a few. I get my own work. But yeah, there's a triangle. So you've got your client who wants the work, then they go to an agency because they've got the budget. The agency then goes to the agent or the production house. So you can go to the agent. So it's client to the agency to the production house or the agency type thing. So there's a triangle. And so the agent represents the photographer and they have a stable of photographers. So they might have 12, 25 or whatever. And then, so in this loop, they'll go, well, we need a photographer. Oh, we got 12 here. So they'll go there because they feel like they've been looked after and managed and the work's going to be managed correctly. But what they don't realize is that they come to this guy here and they've got, say, £100,000. By the time it gets to the agency, it's dropped to 50,000. By the time it gets to production, it's 20. By the time it gets to the photographer, it's 5, 2, 1. So we've only got 1,500 quid for this job, James. Oh, right, okay. And all the money's just gone straight away. It's been sucked away down here. But they keep it in this loop. So getting into fashion is very tricky. You can do submissions. So, for example, there's a lot of online magazines at the moment now. There's loads of online magazines. You just have to go to an online magazine and look what the stipulations are. And they'll say, it's got to be in this format, and we've got to sign off on the looks. Some magazines want to control the look, but some magazines say, go away and shoot it, put it together yourself, and submit it. So you can submit those pictures to one of these online magazines, minimum like 6 images, 8 images, 10 images. You're telling a story, it's an editorial, and they'll feature it. Then you use it as a lever to try and get into something else, and you can do that way. But to go and knock on the door of a magazine now and get in, no chance. No chance. I wouldn't get in now. Not that I've really done that many magazines. I've done different country magazines, but none of the big ones. You know, when I was like yourself now, I was desperate to get into a magazine because Peter Lindbergh and all these people doing this. I wanted to get into it, but just couldn't. So I'd say you've got to create your own concepts. You've got to create your own little teams, create your own pictures, and start putting them out there. And you can use social media because that's one of the benefits now. Is if you use Instagram as a portfolio, you'll be able to get seen a lot quicker, regardless of your followers. I mean, followers are important because you need to be talking to an audience, but build up your social media and get other people to look at what you're doing and interact with other people and like their stuff. But it really is tricky. As I was saying in the conversation, if I phoned up an agency in the past, I could get in to see them on a Thursday or a Friday afternoon before they go down the pub, you know. But now, nothing. Very rarely. Agencies like to go to an agent who represents photographers, and they keep this little loop going. I've had that for years. I've had a conversation with agencies. It's just the way it happens, James. There are. Don't let me discourage you. You just got to keep creating content. And it's tricky if you haven't got budget to do it, you have to pull together a team. And the biggest bone of contention for me is when I'm trying to create my own stuff, I want to work with a stylist. So you come up with a concept, you do the mood boards, you talk about it all, and you book a date out, pencil it in the diary. All of a sudden they get a job and they leave you at the last minute. So you got everybody else, but they're not doing it, and they're the key person. So there's a lot of people letting you down. So unless you've got some budget to put into that type of scenario, then it's not going to work. But if you can work with university, like the design department or a fashion designer trying to get up, then you can create your own little crew and you can do it. Become a self-publisher, publish your own pictures online, create your own books, create your own magazine with Flipbook or all these, and create it. Just get it out there. Somebody will look if you do something different. I mean, a lot of my stuff is bland. I like a lot of stuff, but I just wanted to show that the real stuff is on the portfolio. But I've tried to. There's a lot of pictures that I do that I like because of the lighting, but not necessarily what I've done is fantastic to me. But Jack could say to me, that's because you've seen it too much. And I think that's the thing when you look at your own work. But I'd just say that go out and start creating content and try to find a little niche somewhere, because there is opportunity. You're not going to get into a big magazine yet, potentially, but you have to look at the smaller magazines. There's a lot of online magazines will take submissions, get your work out, and it'll give you a tear sheet. In fact, I used to run one. I created a magazine about 4 years ago because I couldn't get a stylist to get. You book a stylist and they say, well, I need a pull letter. What's a pull letter? Well, it's a letter that allows me to go and pull the clothes from the shops, but they need to say you're from a magazine. So, oh, right, okay. So I formed a magazine called Minus 10, which you saw. And then what I was doing, I was asking other photographers to submit their work. I started to build this magazine to eventually charge them like 200 quid or dollars to get featured on there. And I shut it down after a while because all I wanted was to give out a pull letter. So I could say, there's your pull letter to the stylist, go and get you one. And at the bottom, there's a disclaimer saying, the magazine is not responsible for any damage to clothing. Stylist is completely responsible. Off you go. So I started to do that. So that's something you can do. Pull letters will get a stylist to pull the clothes that you want. But to be honest, you don't really need branded clothes. You just need to go into secondhand shops and stuff like that and, you know, pull clothes together. It's like the plastic, the idea of the plastics, a pair of pants, a mask and some flippers on the side of the surf. You got a picture that people start questioning. Yes.
I know you briefly mentioned it, so you pick yourself forward. But do you find that when you're working with clients, I know you said you get those shots all in between when you're asking them to move somewhere,
Yeah.
do you find that it comes up frequently that clients will choose those shots that they didn't have in mind, the ones that you grabbed because you personally like them more, or do you find that they are very sort of narrow in their mindset, they want exactly what they want, or do you find that they tend to lean more towards the ones that are just sort of happy accidents?
It's not something that I always get, but it's something that I sometimes get. And when I sometimes get those pictures, the client at the time, I'll take the picture and I'll show them on the back of the camera. They go, well, I don't like that. I've got one picture in mind. I don't like that. The hair's really bad. Oh, okay, fine. I put it out there because they're not interested. No, James, you know that picture you put out there? Yeah, we quite like that. Can we use it? Well, you didn't pay for it, but yeah, you can. But yeah, no, clients are quite adamant. So, for example, if I'm doing when I've been doing campaigns, they'll have some loose mood board or style that they want to follow, and then I've had the ability to interpret that in my way and then post-produce it. But then when I'm working for like Superdrug, even though they had a rigid formula of what they're trying to achieve, so there's the packaging, there's a headshot, this is what we want to put on it, then you still got your creative license to interpret that, but they will most likely want that shot. So in between shots aren't going to count in the Superdrug ones because they know exactly what they want. But more editorial and stuff like that, you got a chance. So yes, they would use those shots. And no, you shouldn't give them to them. You should sell them. But I rarely do that. Although I just did that before Christmas and I got a nice little Brucey bonus because I told some client you can't use those pictures, they're out of usage. Because a client had used them, they'd gone to another client and bought them out, and I said, you can't use those pictures unless you pay me. So, oh right, how much? I went, oh right, okay. I've got a little bit of a hook going on here, so I managed to get a nice little Brucey bonus before Christmas, which was good by usage. So when you do a shoot, there's a lot of usage, so you can get paid your day rate. There could be anything from, I don't know, however, 500 to 1,000 to 5,000 to 10,000, just depends where you are in the marketplace. But then the agent will control the production for you and they'll take over the lion's share, so they get part of that £100,000, but you still only get booked by your agent for, let's say, £5,000 for argument's sake. So you'll think, oh great, I've got 5,000 of this job, but she's probably had 25,000 quid. And then she'll, on top of that, let's say, right, it's going to be used for 12 months or 24 months. So there's a usage for that period of time, which I've never really got too much of, because working independent, you can use the usage calculator, which is at the AOP. You can use that. It just doesn't really have a true reflection, but it gives you a guide as to what you can charge. But you can get usage, and then you get buyout and all rights and stuff like that. And, you know, some of the buyouts and usage is like 10 times the amount of your day rate. You know, especially if it's a major campaign going all over the world, it could be 150, 200,000 pounds. So, for example, you know, when you go to the airport, you see these pictures called stoppers, and they're like for the watches, the perfumes. The photographers that have done that are probably making 200,000 or 300,000 pounds out of those. They might get paid 10,000, 15,000 for the day, but with usage and buyout and everything, or usage over 2 years, and it can get up to some serious money. And that's when you get an agent. An agent is the one who negotiates that for you. When you're on your own, it's a lot more tricky to manage that and to do that. And that's where I would probably say that I've lost out in the years. Make a good fee for what I'm doing, but through an agent, you would more than likely be able to get usage. Definitely. Yeah, so answer to your question is they wouldn't always use the pictures, but wherever they could, they would. Some clients don't want to, and some clients will. Yeah. Any more questions for any more?
Have you ever had clients say, "Oh, we want you to take, do the shoot, but can you just give us the rules?"
Yes. And the answer is no, I don't. I won't give rules away. You can't give them. If they can have them. I've just done that with this client. They did a buyout. If they do a buyout, you can have them.
What if they say, "Well, we just want you to photograph it, but if you just give us the rule, we'll do it."
No, that's the classic liners. I've got everything for nothing.
Yeah.
They'll do that, and they'll try it with everybody, because the skill is becoming a businessman as a photographer and managing your work. And a lot of clients these days, because they are a lot more savvy, and there is a lot more ease in being able to try and find Joe Bloggs down the road, who's a weekend warrior. He'll come and do the job for 150 quid, 200 quid, and then they'll still want to get the pictures, and they'll say, we'll do the edits ourselves. Well, you can't do that, can you? Because if you spend ages creating all these beautiful pictures and you give it to them, and the reason why I don't do it, because it happened once, you give them the picture and they just get obliterated. They do all sorts. In fact, on that calendar campaign for Lambertz, that actually happened. So my pictures went in like that, with the horse and Dieter von Teese and everything, really nicely retouched. It took a month to do retouching. It was signed off. When the calendar came back, they had like this big cause of vernissage in Berlin. I went to one or two. And they have all the dignitaries from all over the, ambassadors and everything that promote all this stuff. And then I saw my pictures and went, oh my God, what have they done to it? I should have brought it, because the difference between that, I think they went and got Portrait Pro as a plugin, honest to God, because I've looked at that myself, not to do retouching, but just to see what it is. And I recognise the oversaturation of the colours. And on the Dieter von Teese pictures, especially on the legs, they're like orange and they're completely devoid of any texture. And then that went out, and then people go, oh my God, James, did you do? No, it's nothing to do with me. But that's an example of they had the pictures and they messed around with them, even though they were signed off. So I wouldn't give pictures away, because first of all, you're going to lose out with them messing around with them, and it's your brand that they're damaging, because they'll say, oh, James has done this. No, I didn't. And then once they've got them, they keep on using them over and over and over again. You might not want them to be used again, you know. So, no, I wouldn't give rules away ever. Or JPEGs, unless they've paid for them. If they haven't paid for them, they don't get them. So I always cull my pictures first. So I'll take all the shots, take the cards in. I'll always cull the pictures before I even look at them in Lightroom. I only use Lightroom really for selection. And then from selection, I will then put them into Photoshop, and that's what they get.
Not that, I think that just leaves us to thank James for coming down to talk to us and giving us your
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I need a water now.